Hi, I'm Chloe. Today I'm going to read you the story of Emily, which is titled like this. When I was preparing for my mom's birthday, I overheard my sister whisper, "I can't wait for Emily to get out." Mom laughed. "Not before she pays the $80,000 mortgage." I grinned and closed the door. 2 days later, I made a toast. Well, let's go. I'm Emily, and this is how my life got completely messed up. It all started when I was about to graduate from college. I had my whole future planned out, get my degree, find a good job, maybe get my own place, normal stuff that every 22-year-old dreams about, right? But then everything changed in one phone call. "Emily, honey, we need to talk," Helen said over the phone. Her voice sounded weird, like she'd been crying. "Can you come home this weekend? It's about your father." I drove home that Friday with my stomach in knots. When I walked into our house, I could tell something was seriously wrong. Richard was sitting at the kitchen table looking pale and tired. Helen was hovering around him like he might break into pieces. "What's going on?" I asked, dropping my backpack by the door. Richard looked up at me with tired eyes. "I went to the doctor last week for my chest pains. Turns out my heart isn't doing so great, kiddo." My world just stopped. Richard had always been this strong guy who worked construction, never complained about anything. Seeing him look so small and fragile scared the hell out of me. "The doctor says I can't do physical work anymore," he continued. "I'm going to have to find something part-time, something easier on my body." Helen sat down next to him and grabbed his hand. "We're worried about the mortgage payments, Emily. Your father's new job won't pay nearly as much as his old one." I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Our family had always struggled with money, but we managed. Now, everything was falling apart right when I was supposed to start my own life. "And there's your sister to think about, too," Helen added, glancing toward the stairs. "Mia's only 16, still in high school. She needs things for school clothes, you know how teenagers are." Mia came bouncing down the stairs at that moment, earbuds, and completely oblivious to the heavy conversation happening in the kitchen. She looked so young and carefree, 6 years younger than me. She'd always been the baby of the family. "Hey, Em," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "Didn't know you were coming home." "Hey, Mia." I managed to say, my voice sounding weird even to me. After Mia disappeared into the living room, Helen leaned forward and looked at me with desperate eyes. "Emily, we know this is a lot to ask, but we need your help. Would you consider moving back home after graduation just for a while until we get back on our feet?" I stared at them, both feeling the weight of their expectations crushing down on me. These were my parents, the people who raised me, who supported me through college. How could I say no? So I graduated college and moved back into my childhood bedroom. Within a week, I landed a decent job at an accounting firm. The pay was pretty good for a fresh graduate, and I felt proud of myself for getting hired so quickly. But that pride didn't last long. My first paycheck came, and I was excited to finally have some real money. I deposited it and came home ready to talk about my budget, maybe set aside some money for myself. "Emily, the mortgage payment is due tomorrow," Richard said as soon as I walked through the door, "and we got the electric bill today." Just like that, my entire paycheck disappeared: mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas money. Everything went to keeping our family afloat. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that things would get better, but they didn't. Month after month, my paychecks went straight to family expenses. I watched my bank account stay practically empty while I worked 40 hours a week. Meanwhile, Mia got everything she needed for school, new clothes, supplies, money for activities with her friends. "She needs to fit in," Helen would say whenever I questioned the spending on Mia. "High school is hard enough without looking poor." 2 years passed like this. Mia graduated high school, and I hoped things might finally ease up. Maybe I could start saving some money for myself, maybe even think about getting my own place. Then Mia announced she was going to college. My parents beamed with pride, and I tried to smile too, but my stomach dropped when I realized what this meant. And just like that, college tuition got added to my list of expenses. Mia picked an expensive school with dorms, meal plans, textbooks, spending money. All of it fell on me to pay. "It's an investment in her future," Helen kept saying. "You understand, right? Emily family helps family." So there I was, 24 years old, working full-time and paying for everyone else's life while I lived in my childhood bedroom. I watched my college friends on social media going on trips, getting their own apartments, dating, having fun. Meanwhile, I couldn't even afford to go out for drinks after work. One Friday, my coworker Rachel invited me to go away for the weekend with a group of girls. "There's this cute little bed and breakfast about 2 hours away," she said. "It's only like $200 for the whole weekend, including meals. Come on, Emily, you never do anything fun." "I'll think about it," I told Rachel, but inside I was already planning how I could make it work. That night at dinner, I brought it up casually. "Some friends from work are going away this weekend. I was thinking about joining them." Helen looked up from her plate with that expression I knew too well. "How much would something like that cost?" "It's not that expensive, maybe $200 total." Helen set down her fork and shook her head. "Emily, honey, you know we're tight on money right now. Mia needs new textbooks for her classes, and the water heater has been making that weird noise. $200 could go towards something actually useful for the family." I stared at all of them, feeling something cold settle in my chest. I was working my ass off to pay for everything, and I couldn't even spend $200 on myself for one weekend. "You're right," I said quietly. "I'll tell them I can't go." Helen smiled like I'd made the right choice. That's my sensible girl. The family comes first always. 2 more years went by like this. I was 26 now, and I'd been supporting my entire family for 4 years straight. 4 years of my life gone, and I had nothing to show for it except a closet full of old clothes and a bank account that never had more than a few $100s in it. Meanwhile, Mia was living it up at college. Every time she came home for breaks, she had new stuff, designer jeans, expensive makeup, the latest iPhone, while I was still using my cracked screen phone from 3 years ago. "Where does she get money for all this?" I asked Helen one day, watching Mia show off her new Coach purse to her high school friends. "Oh, you know how college kids are," Helen said, waving her hand dismissively. "She probably saved up from her campus job or something." But something didn't add up. Mia never talked about having a job, and whenever I asked her directly, she'd change the subject real quick. The breaking point came during spring break of Mia's sophomore year. She came home with shopping bags full of clothes, new sneakers that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month, and some fancy skincare routine that probably cost $200. I was in the kitchen making dinner when she walked in wearing a brand new leather jacket. "Nice jacket," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Looks expensive." Mia shrugged and grabbed a soda from the fridge. "Yeah, I got it last week. There was this amazing sale downtown." "Must have been some sale. That jacket looks like it cost at least $300. She froze for a second, then turned to face me with this guilty look on her face. "It wasn't that much." "Mia, where are you getting money for all this stuff? Last time I checked, you don't have a job." Her face went red, and she started fidgeting with the jacket zipper. "That's none of your business, Emily. God, why are you always so nosy about everything? Because I'm the one paying for your college tuition, your dorm, your meal plan, and apparently everything else in this house," I snapped. "So yeah, I think I have a right to know where you're getting hundreds of dollars to blow on clothes. Maybe if you weren't so cheap all the time, you'd understand that college students need nice things too," she shot back. "Cheap? I'm cheap." I could feel my voice getting louder. "Mia, I work 40 hours a week and give every single dollar to this family. I can't even afford to buy myself new clothes." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever, Emily, you wouldn't understand anyway." "Then explain it to me. Where is this money coming from?" "I don't have to tell you anything," Mia yelled, and then she burst into tears and ran upstairs to her room. I stood there in the kitchen, shaking with anger and confusion. Something was seriously wrong here, and nobody was telling me the truth. Helen and Richard came home from grocery shopping right as Mia was slamming her bedroom door. "What's all the shouting about?" Richard asked, setting bags on the counter. "I was asking Mia where she gets money for all her expensive stuff, and she freaked out on me." Helen and Richard exchanged this weird look, and Helen started unpacking groceries really fast, not meeting my eyes. "Emily, you need to stop bothering your sister about her personal business," Helen said. "Personal business, Mom. She's spending hundreds of dollars on clothes and accessories. Where is that money coming from if she doesn't work?" Richard cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Look, Emily, your sister just wants to fit in with her classmates. College is tough and she needs to feel like she belongs. That doesn't answer my question. Where is the money coming from? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Helen kept avoiding my eyes, and Richard was suddenly very interested in organizing the canned goods. "Oh my God," I said, the realization hitting me like a truck. "You're giving her money. You're taking the money I give you for bills and giving it to Mia for shopping." "Emily, it's not that simple," Helen started. "It's exactly that simple," I was shouting now. "I'm working my ass off to pay the mortgage and utilities, and you're taking that money and funding Mia's shopping sprees." "She just needs a few nice things," Richard said weakly. "She doesn't want to look poor in front of her friends." "So I should look poor. Instead, I should wear the same old clothes and use a broken phone so Mia can have a Coach purse." "You're being selfish, Emily," Helen said, finally looking at me. "Mia is trying to get an education and build a future. She needs to network, make connections. Looking professional is part of that." "Professional? She's buying designer jeans and makeup, not business suits." They both stood there, looking guilty as hell, and I realized this had been going on for months, maybe years. Every dollar I'd scraped together, every sacrifice I'd made, and they were using my money to spoil Mia while telling me I couldn't even go on a weekend trip. "This stops now," I said firmly. "I give you money for necessities, mortgage, utilities, groceries. That's it. No more funding Mia's lifestyle." Helen's face hardened. "Emily, you're being unreasonable. Your sister deserves to enjoy her college experience. And I deserve to have some kind of life too, but instead I'm trapped here, paying for everyone else while you lie to me about where the money goes." Richard tried to play peacemaker. "Maybe we can work something out, find a compromise." "The compromise is that Mia stops spending my money on unnecessary crap. If she wants designer clothes, she can get a job like every other college student." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them standing there, looking uncomfortable. For the first time in 4 years, I felt like I'd finally stood up for myself. After that confrontation, the house felt like a war zone. Mia wouldn't even look at me anymore. She'd walk right past me in the hallway, like I didn't exist, wouldn't say good morning at breakfast. And if I tried to talk to her during family dinners, she'd just stare at her plate and ignore me completely. At first, I tried to fix things between us. I mean, she was still my little sister, right? Even if she was being a spoiled brat about money. "Mia, can we talk?" I asked one evening when she was coming out of the bathroom. She looked right through me and kept walking to her room. "Mia, I'm trying to have a conversation with you." She slammed her door so hard the pictures on the hallway wall shook. This went on for weeks. Every family dinner was awkward as hell with Mia sitting there like she was being tortured just by breathing the same air as me. Helen and Richard kept shooting me these disappointed looks like I was the bad guy for not wanting to fund my sister's shopping addiction. "You could try being nicer to her," Helen suggested one night after Mia had stomped off to her room again. "I could try being nicer. She's the one acting like a child because I won't pay for her designer clothes anymore. She's going through a hard time at school. She just wants to fit in." "Everyone wants to fit in, Mom. That doesn't mean the rest of us should go broke making it happen." But I was getting tired of the Cold War. Mia was acting like I'd personally ruined her life, and honestly, I was starting to not care anymore. If she wanted to pout and give me the silent treatment, fine. I had bigger problems to worry about, like the fact that I was still trapped in this house at 26 with no end in sight. Things got even worse a few weeks later. Mia came home from college for a long weekend and announced over dinner that she wanted to go to Florida with her friends for spring break. "It's going to be so much fun," she said, actually speaking for the first time in months. "We're planning to stay at this really nice resort right on the beach." Helen and Richard smiled like this was the best news they'd heard all year. "That sounds wonderful, honey," Helen said. "You deserve a nice vacation after working so hard at school." I almost choked on my food. Working hard, Mia barely maintained a C average and spent most of her time posting selfies on Instagram. "The trip is going to cost about $800. Mia continued, then looked directly at me for the first time in weeks, including flight, hotel, and spending money. The whole table went quiet. Helen and Richard both turned to look at me with these expectant expressions, like it was just assumed I'd hand over $800 for Mia's vacation. I put down my fork and shook my head. No. Mia's face went from hopeful to angry in about 2 seconds. What do you mean no? I mean no, I'm not paying for your spring break trip. If you want to go to Florida, get a job and save up the money yourself. But Emily, Richard started, it's important for Mia to have these experiences in college. Then you pay for it, I said. I'm not funding her vacation when I haven't had a real day off in 4 years. Mia threw her fork down on her plate so hard it made a loud clang. I'm not hungry anymore, she announced dramatically and stormed away from the table. Emily, you're being too harsh, Helen said once Mia was gone. She's young. She should be having fun. And I should be having fun too, but instead I'm working to pay for everyone else's lives. When do I get to go on vacation? When do I get to have experiences? You're older, you should be more mature about this, Richard replied. I'm mature enough to know that $800 for a spring break trip is ridiculous when we can barely afford our regular bills. They both sat there looking at me like I was the most selfish person alive, but I didn't care anymore. I was done being the family ATM. The next few days were even more tense than usual. Mia was back to ignoring me, and now Helen and Richard were giving me the cold shoulder too. But I stood my ground, no spring break money, no matter how much they all pouted about it. Then Helen's birthday came up, and she asked me to help get the house ready for her party. We're having everyone over, she said. Your aunts and uncles, some of our friends from church. I want the house to look perfect. I agreed to help because despite everything, she was still my mother. We spent the whole day cleaning, and I even helped her cook some of the food for the party. I'm going upstairs to clean the guest room, I told her, when we were almost done with the main floor. I was up there dusting and vacuuming when I realized I was thirsty. I quietly headed downstairs to get some water from the kitchen, and that's when I heard voices coming from the stairway. It was Helen and Mia talking in low whispers. I heard my name and stopped dead in my tracks. Something told me I needed to hear this conversation. I crept closer to the doorway and listened. I can't wait until Emily finally moves out of here, Mia was saying. The day she leaves, I'm personally going to throw all her stuff outside and turn her room into my walk-in closet. My heart started pounding, but I kept listening. Now, Helen said, but she was laughing softly. We can't kick Emily out just yet. We still owe $80,000 on the mortgage. Well, once that's paid off, she's gone right, Mia asked. And then this house will be mine. You're not leaving anything to Emily. Of course not, Helen replied. Emily is capable of taking care of herself. You're the one who will need our help. This house will be yours someday, sweetie. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I stood there in the hallway, listening to my mother and sister casually discuss using me until the mortgage was paid off, then kicking me out with nothing. 4 years of my life, 4 years of giving them every penny I earned, and this was how they really felt about me. I wasn't their daughter and sister. I was just their personal bank account. I wanted to march right over there and tell them exactly what I thought of their plan, but then I had a better idea. Helen's birthday party was in 2 days. All our relatives would be there, everyone who thought our family was so close and loving. I smiled to myself as I quietly went back upstairs to finish cleaning. In 2 days, everyone would learn the truth about what kind of people my parents and sister really were. The next 2 days were the hardest acting job of my life. I smiled at breakfast, helped Helen finish preparing for her party, and even made small talk with Mia when she bothered to acknowledge my existence. The whole time, their words kept playing in my head. We can't kick Emily out just yet. We still owe $80,000 on the mortgage. I'd already packed my suitcases and hidden them in my closet. I'd also found a small apartment across town and put down a deposit. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Helen's birthday finally arrived, and the house filled up with relatives and family friends, Aunt Susan, Uncle Tom, my cousins, people from church. Everyone was there, talking and laughing like we were this perfect, happy family. Emily, you look tired, honey, Aunt Susan said, giving me a hug. Are you working too hard? If only she knew the half of it. The evening went on with everyone eating, chatting, and sharing stories. Then it was time for presents. Helen opened gift after gift, flowers, jewelry, gift cards, a nice sweater from Aunt Susan. Finally, it was my turn. I walked over and handed her a beautiful envelope I bought just for this occasion. Oh, how lovely, Helen said, smiling at everyone around her. She opened the envelope carefully, probably expecting cash or a gift card, but when she looked inside, her face went completely blank. The envelope was empty. "Where's the gift?" she asked, confusion spreading across her face. I smiled sweetly at her. "That's exactly what you, Richard and Mia, deserve. Nothing." The whole room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Helen's face turned red. "Emily, I don't understand what you're talking about. This must be some kind of mistake." "No mistake, Mom. See, I overheard a really interesting conversation between you and Mia 2 days ago about how you can't wait to kick me out once the mortgage is paid off, about how Mia gets to inherit this house while I get nothing." Gasps went around the room. Mia turned white as a sheet. "I also learned that you've been taking the money I give you for bills and spending it on Mia's shopping sprees. So I figured, why should I give you anything when you've already planned to give me nothing?" Richard stood up, his face angry. "Emily, this is your mother's birthday. How dare you ruin it with this nonsense?" "Nonsense?" I laughed. "Dad, I've been supporting this entire family for 4 years. I pay the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, Mia's college tuition, everything. And this is how you repay me, by planning to throw me out like garbage once you don't need my money anymore." Mia started crying. "Emily, you're a terrible sister. I hate you." "Good," I said calmly, "because I'm done being your personal ATM. I'm moving out today and I'm never paying another bill for this family again. Your dream of me leaving is coming true, Mia, but now you can figure out how to pay for your own college." That's when Richard's sister, Aunt Diane, stood up with a shocked expression. "Wait a minute," she said slowly. "Emily has been supporting the whole family because your parents told us that you were living here because you couldn't find a good job. They said you were struggling and they were helping you out of pity." All the other relatives started nodding and murmuring in agreement. "That's what we heard too," Uncle Tom said. "We thought Emily was the one getting help, not giving it." I wasn't even surprised anymore. Of course, they'd been lying to everyone about that too. "Well, now you know the truth," I said to the room full of shocked faces. "I'm sorry this ruined your party, everyone, but I couldn't keep pretending anymore." I walked upstairs to get my suitcases, while the whole room erupted in confused conversations behind me. When I came back down with my bags, all the guests were still there, watching this family drama unfold like it was a soap opera. "Goodbye," I said simply, and walked out the front door. Most of the guests followed me outside, probably trying to make sense of what they just witnessed. I loaded my suitcases into my car and drove away without looking back. My new apartment was small and mostly empty, but when I walked through that door, I felt something I hadn't felt in 4 years free. Of course, my family wouldn't leave me alone. My phone started ringing within an hour and didn't stop. Helen, Richard, Mia, they all called and texted nonstop, but I didn't answer a single call or read a single message. After about a month of peaceful silence, some distant cousin I barely knew called me. "Emily, you need to make up with your parents," she said. "They're really struggling without your help." "Good," I said and hung up. More relatives called after that, all with the same message about how I should forgive my family and help them out. I hung up on every single one of them. 3 months passed, and I heard through mutual friends that Mia had been forced to drop out of college because she couldn't afford tuition. She was now working at some store in the mall, trying to help Helen and Richard with the mortgage payments. I felt exactly zero sympathy for any of them. I was finally living my own life. I could buy myself new clothes, go out with friends, save money for the future. For the first time since college, I felt like a real person, instead of just a paycheck. My family had made their choice when they decided to use me. They thought they could take advantage of my love for them indefinitely, that I'd never figure out their plan or stand up for myself. They were wrong, and now they could figure out how to survive without me, just like I'd learned to survive without them. I was done being their meal ticket, and I'd never been happier in my life.